morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you're listening to us, welcome back. My name is Greg Massi, and this is The Color of Air, a podcast about the musical journey. We have got another great episode coming up for you today, which I'll talk about in a minute. But I just wanted to reflect back real quick. We're up to episode 8, and it's been a really amazing bunch of episodes so far. I've been able to have a variety of different guests, which makes me happy. The guests that I have had will have their fans download the episodes, and then they go back and rediscover the earlier episodes with the different artists. And I think that's a really cool thing, because my goal with this podcast is not to cater to any one particular genre or any one particular group of people. My mission statement has always been that a musical journey or an artistic journey is something that lots of different people experience in different ways, and they all have a unique perspective and a unique, interesting story to tell. So I hope that has come through in the interviews we've done so far. A couple plugs, of course. You can find us on the web at www.colorofairpodcast.com. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/colorofairpodcast. We are on Twitter at The Color of Air. You can also email us, colorofairpodcast@gmail.com. And as we are a Ret Con Recordings production, you can find more information about the musical releases by Ret Con Recordings at, you guessed it, retconrecordings.com. And up now, you can download, stream, buy the first 2 releases by Balaset, the 2009 album, A Time for Rust, and the new 2013 EP, Exordium. And $2 from every purchase of Exordium will go towards Mains and Motions, a non-profit therapeutic writing organization based in Connecticut. So, exciting things are in the works. I've probably talked about this, but, I've had some time off from work this past week, mostly to just kind of get my head straight, because things have been so overwhelming between trying to keep my job stuff straight, as well as, the podcast and music and everything else going on in life. Because let's face it, I'm not making my living off music. I'm not making my living off a podcast by any stretch of the imagination. So, I have to have a day job in order to make this all work and come together. But, taking the time off has been nice, because it's allowed me to sit down and really think about the goals that I want, the goals with my music, the goals with this podcast. And in addition to just bringing you interesting people that I'm fortunate enough to either know or get to know and talk to, I want to build this into something bigger too. And right now, I can tell you my pipe dream for this podcast is, to have live Color of Air shows where I would like to treat it almost kind of like that old VH1 storyteller show. Have somebody come on, I'll interview them live, and then maybe have them perform to strip down a song and explain their creative process, their musical journey, and then perform it. And it's like I said, it's a pipe dream. It's something that's in my head, kind of like when I was a kid and I used to listen to Ozzy Osbourne's song Hellraiser in my bedroom, and I didn't know how to play the song, but I had the guitar. But I would sit there and play, and I would focus the light on me so it looked like there was a spotlight on me. And in my head, I had this dream of being on stage, rocking out, which, not to the level of Ozzy Osbourne, but it is something I've gotten to do quite a few times in my life, and it's been very rewarding. So that's the dream for this podcast, is to turn this into some sort of live performance storytelling thing. And the only way we're going to be able to do that is to get more attention to this podcast. So if you're listening, I appreciate it. This podcast is definitely going to always be free like any other podcast. We don't have any sponsorships. Not that I'm averse to them, but I don't want to go the normal route of podcasts and have Squarespace or NatureBox or Hulu Plus or any of those other kind of standard podcast sponsors. If I'm going to have a sponsorship for the show, I want it to be related to what this show is really about. So if you run a boutique effects pedal company, get in touch with me, colorofairpodcast@gmail.com. I'll be more than happy to talk about pedals and gear and stuff like this on the podcast. I think that's a wonderful idea. And they didn't prompt this. They didn't pay me to do this. But I can tell you right now, I'm going to give you my wholehearted endorsement of the Z-Cat pedal company. I was fortunate enough to see a video from them, and then fortunate enough to get a Christmas present from my wife, which was the Z-Cat Big Reverb pedal with, the Big Reverb TI. You know, it's not a super expensive pedal. It's not the cheapest pedal, but it's not one of those $300, $400 boutique guitar pedals. It's a small reverb pedal that gives amazing delay/reverb, completely spacey ambient sounds. Sounds like one of those studio quality effects processors that you see, but all contained in a nice little pedal. And I love the company, and I plan on getting more of their pedals. So, see what I mean? If you work for a gear company, get in touch. I'll be more than happy to talk about gear in the future. But anyway, enough about the future goals. Let's talk about the present. And the present today is my interview with Chuck Stern. Chuck is somebody I've known for a long time because my band KO. My old band KO. And his old band Time of Orchids used to play a number of shows together. In fact, the first KO. Show, was it the first? I can't remember. One of the first KO. Shows, maybe the first or second one, was in New York City, and we played with Time of Orchids and Behold the Octopus and a bunch of other bands. And it was my introduction to that scene. It was the first time I met Chuck. It was the first time I met Jesse Krakow, the bass player from Time of Orchids, who's going to be our guest next week. And I met the guys from Behold the Octopus. I met Tim Burns from the Friendly Bears. I met all these people who, all these years later are still friends of mine, acquaintances that I've known for years. Very cool people, amazing musicians. And to see how they've grown over the last, when was that? 2003. So I guess to see how they've grown over the last 11 years has been remarkable. And Chuck is no exception. After Time of Orchids broke up, Chuck went on to form the band Stern, and he self-released a couple albums that were pretty much him. He had a couple guest musicians. He made a music video. He was getting himself out there, just getting his songs out there. And then a couple years ago, he turned Stern into a real full band, and they released an EP called Entitlement, which, from all the words I heard from people involved with it, was going to be something special. And sure enough, when I bought it, it was. Chuck has created this interesting, cool sound for himself. It's got, string synth sounds that remind you of Angelo Badalamenti, if I'm pronouncing that name correctly. He's got really cool, clean guitar sounds. Again, very reminiscent of Badalamenti's music for Twin Peaks. but that's just, one of many influences which shows itself in Chuck's work. It's got everything from dark pop to heavy metal, a little bit of everything, all mixed into this kind of cool stew, I guess is the best word to describe it. And Stern has been evolving since then. And he's involved a lot of people who I love in the scene. He's got Keith Abrams, who was the drummer in Time of Orchids, and also now currently the drummer of KO. He's got Toby Driver, my old bandmate from KO, playing guitar, I believe baritone guitar. He's got Tim Burns, like I said, from Friendly Bears, Hazel Raw, doing keyboards. It's just, he's got a really good mix of people bringing this thing to life. And Chuck was one of the first people I wanted to interview when I first started the podcast. I mean, there's a lot of people I first wanted to interview. I say that all the time, but my list of people I wanted to interview when I first came up with the podcast is probably like 30, 40 deep at this point. But Chuck, I definitely wanted to talk to you because I loved Entitlement so much, and I knew at the time he was working on his new album with Stern. Our first interview was great, but was one of the 5 that was lost when I had my hard drive issue. So Chuck was nice enough to talk to me again. So what follows is a really cool conversation we had where we got into the intricacies of his new album, Bone Turquoise. And I liked that I got to re-interview him because when I first interviewed him, the album hadn't even been recorded yet. So this was back in May, but they were in the midst of getting ready to go into the studio. When I interviewed him the second time, the album's completely done, recorded, mixed, mastered. And Chuck was nice enough to send me a copy, a promotional copy, to hear it, and it lived up to the expectation that I had for it. Not that my expectation means anything, but it lived up to the hype that the people involved in it were touting it with, and it's a really remarkable record. And right now, Chuck is in the process of talking to labels to get this thing released, and we will keep you updated here on The Color of Air when that actually happens. But to get you psyched, I've got a couple tracks. I cleared it with Chuck, and he sent me 2 songs which we're going to play you throughout the course of the interview. The songs are Bone Turquoise, the title track, and The Plot. So those are going to come up during the interview. But first, to introduce you to the music of Stern, I'm going to play you a track off of the Entitlement EP, which came out a couple years ago. You can buy that at entitlement.bandcamp.com. And this song is called All Red Eyes.
And as the dawn bears witness, with all red eyes, to crimes of passion, heaven
Yo, yo.
Hey, what's up, Chuck?
I'm good. How are you, man?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Thanks for taking the time to do this again.
Yeah, no problem. No problem at all.
Sorry about my hard drive malfunction.
No, no, it's cool. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to do it again,
Yeah,
Try it
yeah.
again.
Well, my goal was also, I was trying to come up with different things to ask you to because I didn't want to sound like it was a rehash of the first one,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
which, nobody else is gonna know about, but
No one's gonna know
no
about,
one's
but
gonna
I've
know.
ever.
But yeah, I've been listening to the new record a lot,
Cool.
and I really love it.
Thanks, man.
So, um,
Thanks a lot.
oh sure, yeah. And now at least I can tell you too. I mean, now the podcast is up and running too, so you can actually hear what this is going to sort of sound like
Yeah,
as a finished product.
totally, totally. Yeah, yeah.
um, so I guess the first thing I was going to start with is now that I've heard the new album, uh, how excited are you about the way it came out?
I'm very excited. I mean, yeah, it's like for me, it's 100% like of what I wanted. So I'm really excited about it musically, and yeah, no, I'm really thrilled with it, and just want to share it with people. And we're like currently shopping it around and sort of weighing our options, but we hope to release it soon. Yeah, like probably early 2015 is the goal. And But yeah, no, I think I'm really happy with it. And yeah, people seem to like it so far. Like it seems to be like a something that you're confused about at first and
Yeah.
maybe like dawns on you later. I don't know. What has your experience been with it?
Well, my experience with it is definitely, and I had to go. I went back and listened to Entitlement
Mm,
too because I wanted to kind of put a frame of reference. And the first thing I noticed was that I felt like it took a little bit of a darker turn.
yeah, totally. Yeah.
Um, which is not to say there's not, dark stuff on Entitlement, but I felt like with Entitlement you were starting, there was this kind of almost, I guess, juxtaposition in certain songs where yeah, there was this kind of dark, undertone or whatever, but your vocals are very a little bit prettier, I guess is the best way I could
Yeah,
describe it.
no, totally. There's
With
a
it, yeah,
yeah.
without trying to say anything else about your vocal style,
Right, right.
uh, um, but I felt like the melodies had this kind of more that quality to them, whereas on the new one, I felt it was definitely like a darker turn. The lyrics seemed a little bit more surreal
Wow, yeah.
from what I read. I mean, I didn't read all of them because I was working while I was listening to it, but
Sure, yeah. Actually it's good for that. It's a lot of it is like wrought with like work tension and office frustration. Oh, also just one thing like just occurred to me I want to just mention is that we did talk about it in the last interview, but just that the lyrics that you mentioned, like yeah, they're from originally from this screenplay that I wrote like a couple years ago or a year and a half ago for a film, and it never really. I wasn't entirely happy with it. It never really developed into anything, but I decided to use a lot of the ideas and like certain phrases and stuff from that for the lyrics. So it has this sort of like previous life as a film, as a science fiction film. Not all of it, but some of it does. So
well,
yeah, yeah. I
well,
don't know.
you could tell that, and I actually went into that knowing that from
Yeah,
when we
yeah,
talked about it, and yeah, what I meant was too when I meant surreal, I didn't mean like in the sense that it didn't make sense. Obviously, it was more that I was really just the images that the words were kind of painting. You could
yeah,
tell there was a cinematic influence on it anyway.
yeah.
And I did try to figure out the story without much luck. um,
Yeah, I don't
uh,
know that there is like really a story, but it's like, it's a lot of imagery. As usual for me, it's a lot of imagery that I'm saying something, but I'm also not saying something, and it's not entirely 100% a statement necessarily, but I guess it's provocative at times, and it helps paint like images of the music.
right, yeah, it does. And one thing I was going to get into with the lyrics too. I mean, did you write? I mean, obviously, in this case, did you have any conception of what lyrics and imagery you were going to use from the script before you started writing the music, or was it kind of you wrote the music and then kind of put the bits and pieces you were going to use from the script?
It's more like that, yeah. The latter. I went through it and sort of like got the best pieces and sort of culled all that and had that aside, and basically like plugged a lot of the stuff into certain musical ideas, and I would have sort of songs demarcated for like this lyrical idea or agenda or sort of vibe, and yeah, and just sort of plug the stuff in as it went along. I guess that's generally how I work: is music first and lyrics second. Not always, but mostly that's how it is with me.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I mean, I think that's the way most of us work,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
the most part. It's just, I guess,
Well, I know
easier.
Charlie, like Charlie Looker and I have talked about that a bunch, and I don't know where he stands at the moment, but a lot of his recent stuff, he said it has been lyric first, and I think Tim too, Tim Burns, like it's interesting, yeah, different styles,
Oh,
and
yeah, that is interesting.
yeah,
Well, and I think too. I mean, another thing to kind of bring up from the last interview is just that, I mean, there definitely is that influence in your work throughout all of it of the kind of movie soundtrack,
yeah,
vibe to it.
totally,
Not so much the whole song, but kind of underneath
yeah,
the guitar riffs and everything like that, there is
totally,
that kind of like ambient kind of
yeah,
vibe to it. Um, and what I was also going to ask about the lyrics too is that, so, on Entitlement, I noticed that, on some of those songs there were kind of, obviously the songs are not written in the, traditional songs structure.
yeah.
Um, but I felt like on Entitlement maybe there was like some more, not like choruses, but there was like these kind of,
Yeah, it was a little bit more. Yeah.
yeah, like Stationary Lunch, for instance,
Yeah.
like that's got a really like powerful melodic statement that you repeat, and then that
Yeah.
gets repeated. What I noticed on that you did on the lyrics for the new stuff was I felt like you kind of constructed the lyrics as these kind of poems, so to speak, where you
Yeah.
um, and then I found it interesting the way you took certain lyrics and chose them as the ones you were gonna kind of repeat at various times.
Yeah. Right.
And I'm kind of curious about that because, is it that you felt they worked best with the music, or is it like did they represent some sort of image you were trying to hammer home by,
Yeah.
doing it repeatedly?
Yeah, that I think that's pretty accurate, that what you just said. Like, yeah, like a combination of actually saying something, which
Hmm.
is important with words,
Yeah.
it's, I mean, but it's not entirely that too. I mean, a lot of it is just imagery that or just sounds that go with the music. So it's a combination of both. But I am really obsessed with the idea of the anthem and like anthemic stuff and pop, and just things that yeah, that are catchy and are repetitive and like dumb, so to speak. Like I don't know, that's a word we say a lot, is like, oh yeah, it's so dumb, like in a good way, or like
Yeah.
um but yeah, like dumb and repetitive and machine like, and which is sort of like all my stuff, but I guess I don't know. There's a catchy pop way of doing that too, and I like that too. I guess I like repetition, but sometimes, like you said, like chosen spots for that.
Yeah, well, and but I also think you use repetition to your advantage because, just for example, All Red Eyes from the Entitlement EP,
Yeah,
where you kind of, you have those kind of, evocative lyrics about, I'm in hell.
yeah,
And
basically.
I think I mean, I want to make sure that's the right song I'm thinking of.
Yeah, no, that's the one. It's
Okay.
like I'll be in hell,
Oh,
and then
sorry. Thank you. I'll be in hell. Yeah.
eventually it's just it's implied that I'm in hell. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, but it's like, it starts off innocently enough with you repeating that line and it is kind of sung, but then like, you have like the harsher, background vocals coming in and then the music kind of, it's repetitive, but it builds. It's not just,
Right.
it's not like a trance like groove or something like that that you're,
Totally.
so, and I noticed that a little bit on the new stuff as well. Um,
Yeah.
I, I'm gonna try to remember the name. I apologize if I
No,
mess
no,
up
it's
the
fine.
name.
It's also very like confusing,
Yeah.
purposely confusing, like even for me.
I think it was I know the song that kind of stood out for me the most was The Plot.
Yeah, the plot.
Was that the plot of the original story?
Well, yeah, no. So that one is like one thing that it refers to is the plot of the story that is the album. Yeah, like it's actually like the plot, and it's sort of like poking fun at the idea that there even could be something that tangible within that song. I don't know. It's like, and I think something I struggled with in the screenplay a bit was like was actually a plot. Like I don't know. It's like I noticed that I was good at sort of the poetic stylistic stuff, and maybe it was a little lacking in the substance of having a really interesting like provoke. I don't know, like it was something I wasn't quite happy with, so the plot was almost a reaction to that too, like here's the plot, like sarcastically, like here's the plot, try to figure this out. And like, and it's all, but also I want to add about the plot is that it's about like more visually for me, and in another way it's about this huge like tomb, like sorry, there's like weird car sounds in my neighborhood. This huge like tomb on another planet in soil of an alien, like a huge dead alien in this sort of like wet soil mud that's sort of like arbitrarily been like demarcated, like this rectangle. So it's like a plot of land that just sort of occurred to me in a
Oh.
science fiction way, just like a cool thing, this like grave. And so a lot of the grave and death imagery has to do with that, but it also has to do with like uh, creativity and like it's not necessarily entirely negative. It's like it's positive, some of it too, about fertile creativity within the earth. And so it's got a lot in it, but it's like, but also it's got that idea of like this is the plot, but it's also joking about how it's like not the plot because I don't know. It's like it's abstract, obviously.
Right, but it works. I mean,
Thanks.
I mean, it works. I mean, I really love the lyrics. I mean, I
Thanks.
was very psyched about them.
Thanks a
And
lot.
oh
Yeah,
yeah,
I was
no problem.
I was listening to it last night with Keith actually, and he was like this is like U.S. Maple meets Madonna or something, or it's like U.S. Maple if they listen to Madonna something, and I like that too because it has both of those vibes, but like tons of other more metal stuff in it too. I'm sorry I interrupted you. What were
Oh
you
no,
gonna
no, that's fine. Interrupt away. That's fine. Um, no, no, I can kind of agree with that. I suppose. I guess I'm not as familiar with U.S. Maple, so that reference kind of
Yeah,
goes over my head a little bit. But
yeah, that's not even entirely accurate in this song anyway, but maybe timbres, certain timbres and stuff. I don't know.
well, and my other question about the project too. I mean, so the time we last spoke, you had just really been in the process of rehearsing and getting ready for the studio session.
Yeah,
Um, Now, I mean, the recording, mixing, and mastering all seem to kind of come pretty quickly for you.
yeah, yeah.
So did you kind of have every single part mapped out before you went into the studio? Like, you didn't really leave, or did you leave any moments for any possible kind of, just experimenting with overdubs or anything like that? Or was everything pretty much mapped out before you went into the studio?
Yeah, it's like all mapped out entirely. Like I've always worked that way, like as best as I can with overdubs included and stuff. With studio time allotted for some improv stuff, and like so Toby got to do some cool guitar stuff, but for the most part, it's like there's not a ton of band overdubs. Tim doubled organ stuff with Farfisa. We used Mellotron, like a bunch of cool studio things that we got to use, but it was pretty tight for for that stuff. And I guess what I did, and I'm psyched about doing again, is that I did all most of the overdub synth secret things like at home this time, which I
Cool.
prefer to do. And you don't have that rush of being in the studio and doing it, and you get to like just really take your time with it. So I got to add a lot of the stuff that I always like to do, but in the privacy of my own home too, to save time,
Oh
and
yeah.
money and everything. So that was exciting. Yeah.
Well, yeah, well that makes sense. I mean, I do all keyboard stuff for my stuff at home too.
Yeah,
I
there's
mean,
something about that. Like home, like keyboards at home is so important. I don't know, like
well, it's just because
sometimes.
yeah. I mean, are you using an actual keyboard or are you using soft synths or
A keyboard, no, an actual keyboard. It's
okay,
all like pretty much the whole record is on this Roland Juno D digital keyboard that's kind of cheesy, but I love it. It's like got these like sort of piano string sounds, and it's kind of dying now, and I might get it repaired or I might get another one. But in general, I like those sort of sounds. And yeah, it's basically all this one keyboard. Whether it was Tim Burns playing it in the studio or me here at home. That's the sound world of this album. A lot of it is like that keyboard. You
Oh,
know.
that's cool. And
Yeah.
I mean, just in terms of recording at home too, it's just so much easier to. I mean, it's so easy nowadays to do keyboard stuff at home and still retain that kind of sound quality. You don't need because it's not going through an amp, so you don't need a
Right.
mic. You know, you don't need that stuff. You can plug directly in, and you're gonna get really
Exactly.
the high quality sound right away.
It's
So
great, and to be able to transfer that into the studio. I mean, like I think I some of it was like MP3s, like inadvertently, which is actually kind of a funny idea, just dragging a lower quality thing into like a great studio sounding thing. But like
yeah,
it works sometimes. Like there's I don't know, there's like certain distorted like overdubs and things. Like it's not quite perfect at home, but I sort of like that too. The like imperfect
oh yeah,
stuff. So it's like yeah, it's like high quality, but it's also sometimes crackly and sort of like awkward. I don't know.
yeah.
Like I like that lo-fi element to it as well.
Well, it's funny when you talk about that because yeah, I remember when I was working on my first Bellaset album, like I was living with Toby at the time in Boston,
Yeah.
and I remember I just wanted to work on an idea. I wasn't trying to record something. I was just trying to work on an idea, and I plugged in his guitar into a pod, you know,
Oh
just
yeah.
a
Yeah.
Line 6 pod,
Totally.
and I don't know what it was, but there's just this magical reaction where
Wow.
this one part and this one harmony guitar part, and then I was like, cool, that's a cool part. I'll try to replicate that when I get in the studio.
Yeah.
And try as I might, you know, I was like,
Wow.
it never does not sound as good as that, you know, shitty pod, you know?
Yeah. Like I need to get one of those or something. I don't. I know that Justin Broderick used to use one for some of the Jesu stuff, and then that was sort of controversial among the fan. Like it doesn't sound as raw and as heavy, but it like I don't know. It's an interesting gizmo. I don't know.
It is, yeah. Well, and
It
the
is
thing,
heavy in its own way, sort of like it's like
yeah, you know, and modeling has come a long way since those original pods, like, you know,
yeah,
10, 15 years ago.
right.
Um, well, another program you might be interested in, I recommend it because I've actually started using it and it's pretty cool, is it's called Izotope Trash.
Cool. I have to look
And
into it.
it's yeah, from the company Izotope.
Okay.
And I gotta admit, it's like if you're looking for just kind of dirty distortion sounds, it's like
Yeah.
that's what you want to go for. It's like
Uh,
it's not a pretty sounding distortion. It's not, you know, if you want like kind of the clean line 6 sound, that is
right.
one sound. This you can kind of mess with it too. You can mess with the frequency of the distortion. You can mess with
Uh,
they've got like 100 different cab simulations, and it for
that's
some reason
awesome.
I find it really inspiring. So
Yeah.
I recommend it highly.
Cool.
I don't think it's too expensive, but it's worth it.
I have to look into that. And that's like a home thing, is what you're
Oh
saying, right?
yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah.
just a
Yeah.
home program
Amazing.
you know, bring into whatever, you know, program you're using, you know.
Right.
So
Cool. No, that's
yeah,
cool. That's cool. Because I am getting into like nasty and like you said, like this record is like it veers into like sort of scarier, nastier. I mean, like yeah, like a friend of mine was saying that it's more physical and nasty and I don't yeah, just those words, but
I could
essentially
be yeah, I could see that.
I
That
don't know.
you know,
Almost
I
like
know.
more analog, like a little bit sort of like more in within this real world than Entitlement was, like which is a little bit further away. I don't know.
I can see that actually. Yeah, that
It
makes sense to me. I mean, well, yeah, I felt like there was like maybe a little bit more emphasis on the guitar parts in this one.
yeah,
Would
yeah,
that be? Yeah.
totally.
Um, you know, which was cool because yeah, I mean, I love the interplay between the guitar parts and the drums underneath all the other stuff. I mean,
Totally, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. No, this time there were like riffs and like big chunks of like metalish sections and rock, really indulging. And also like Keith and I listen to like so much vinyl here, which I like don't even have any vinyl. It's ridiculous. But he's got this amazing sound system, and we listen to like all this classic rock and shit and weird stuff. You just tons of weird rock, and it's influenced me a lot, like sonically, the past few months that I've been living with him, like six or 7 months. Um, and I think that fed into it too a little bit, like aesthetically too, like just like so there was more room for that, or I made that more of a priority this time, like that and we don't have bass, so it's like
Yeah.
drums, guitar. Like I love just how sparse that can be, and I think we got a lot of that cool stuff on this record. Just like the just the spaciousness of like just the desperate sort of tense stuff between drums and guitar,
Yeah, yeah,
with
yeah,
with
totally.
no bass. And I love bass, I do,
Yeah.
obviously, but I just like it just doesn't. I don't need it in this band really right now, at least.
Bone turquoise for a staunch vessel for you come without an open floodgates wide. How you stand beside me with your hand in mine. Whoa. Bone turquoise. Bone turquoise, the How you stand beside me with your hand in mine. Bone turquoise. Great as heft. The upper crust. Reverse economics. You need to listen. This black licorice is out another galaxy. A no manufacture. The time is now. This is all
It's funny when you mention that because, as I'm listening to it, like I never notice like, oh, I don't notice a bass. Why is there no,
Right.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's times where there is actual synth bass, like there is just bass, straight up bass, and it's really heavy and it's pretty effective. So it's like it is there. It's but I love exploring bass and it's like in other ways. I think we talked about this last time, like
Yeah.
just whether it's like drum stuff, reverby, cavernous stuff, or slow synth stuff, or whatever. But just like making room for new kinds of bass and rock music, I guess.
Yeah. 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 It's really cool.
Thanks.
Um, and so yeah, so you said you're currently kind of shopping around for stuff
Yeah.
for a label for this. So, um, have you gotten any interest yet? You don't have to name specific places, but have you?
Yeah. I mean, like it's not a ton, obviously, but I've been
Yeah.
pretty aggressive. I haven't heard a whole lot, but I've gotten some responses, and I guess there's a label that we're leaning towards at this moment. That's exciting, um, but yeah, there's time. There's no real rush, so I guess we're still curious, to see who's out there and who's interested. And so yeah, so it exists musically. It's all there. You've heard it. I want to share it with people, but I can't obviously yet. But some labels have heard it, and yeah, that's where we stand now. It's like we're waiting to hear back on stuff. But if not, yeah, there's a label that probably will be releasing it next year. So that's exciting. It's
Oh,
nice to like
cool.
know that there's some interest, like something there.
Well,
'Cause-
it
yeah.
kind of it validates you too. I
Yeah.
mean, as much as we kind of sometimes musicians will bemoan the idea of having to have a label because it's like,
I
well,
know.
why
And
can't you
what's
just,
the difference, like me doing it or a label, that kind of stuff too.
yeah.
But I don't know.
And it's like after, 5 years of releasing my own stuff, I can say, yeah, there's there is a difference. And,
There is, and there's nothing wrong with releasing. I mean, that's like what I've done all this time.
right.
But like a label is, I don't know. It's yeah, it's exciting. It can mean hopefully it has the potential to be something that can really help your band.
Right. And it also, it like I said, it validates you as you,
Validates you.
yeah, that's something you've made someone else feels is worthy of release other than you. But the other thing too is in terms of promotion, I mean, the
Yeah.
idea of it being on a label will also help kind of get you in the door for more promotional stuff, more reviews and stuff. Because if you just send your CD, it's like, "Hi, I made this CD." People are like, "Okay,"
Right. I
but
know. Yeah. I know.
but if if you're on a label, it's like, "Oh, well, again, it's silly. It's silly, but also necessary at the same
I
time, I
know.
guess."
I
It's
agree totally. Yeah. Yeah, it's
um,
very super. It can be very superficial, but it does mean things to people, and we do exist in a social world. It's like we
yeah.
can't deny that people matter.
Well, that's interesting. I didn't actually know you've been living with Keith. I didn't know that was.
Yeah, yeah. I've been living with Keith Abrams, who's the drummer of Stern and Chaodot and a million other things, and just genius and great guy.
Yeah.
Living like 5 feet from him for like a few months, like just in these tiny rooms right next to each other, with our friend Bethany, who lives here too. And it's really nice. Yeah, it's like it's cheap, and we're like deep in Astoria, and uh, it's a good vibe. It's fun.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, were you living with him when you were kind of getting the original songs together, or was that after? Because I didn't
No,
know, if it helped to have the drummer in the room with you when you were working on stuff to be like, oh, what do you think about this? Or
I wrote this all actually with a different roommate living in Williamsburg,
oh,
Brooklyn.
okay.
So yeah, so it's interesting, like, but I think about that a lot too, like where things were written and stuff. And I am excited to now write some music this summer here, finally, like in this room, which is really cool. But I haven't done that yet. But yeah, so this was written in Williamsburg and in a like, uber hip, almost like too just highly congested neighborhood. But I think that fed into it, and I would sort of retreat in my room, which was this huge turquoise room, incidentally, turquoise.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I think I had that title before. I don't even remember. Anyway, it talk about validating. It was like, oh, okay, this is where this album needs to be written. Like, it's turquoise, it's big, it's I don't know. It was great. It was like a sanctuary, and I wrote it there, and watched a lot of like '80s sci-fi, and like just got deep into it, and it was fun. And so then we like have done all the recording and practicing mostly like with me living now here with Keith, and I don't know. Those things are just interesting to me. Like, but I'm excited to write music now here in this apartment. I think that I almost think that like each recording or each phase like says something about where you were when you wrote it, not just
Yep.
time wise, but space wise.
Oh yeah, totally. And
Yeah.
and now I mean, is your goal to write another album?
Yeah, I mean, I can't help it. I like to make things, and I think, but I also like to make things that aren't like high stakes for me. Like albums are really big projects and really exciting, but like I like to just make like dioramas and like silly things that mean nothing just for me. So it's like it's almost like time right now to do some of that kind of stuff and like and relax just a second. But then yes, I do want to start writing a new album, and I have some cool ideas, and I think it'll be awesome. So we'll see where that goes. But
Yeah, that's cool. Well,
inevitably there will be another album, I'm sure. Yeah.
and I think we went over last time too. Is it's you're kind of unique in that scene because you don't have a gazillion other side projects either.
Yeah, it's true. I know. I had a couple. This thing, Hybegnu and Sculptress, were two things I did a few years ago, and they were sort of one-off things, and I'm really proud of those things. But like yeah, that now I had sort of cleared a little bit of space in my head to just do Stern, and that's like I'm really in this just egomaniacal me Stern phase right now, I guess. But yeah, it's fun. It's fun to like just it's fun to not have like other projects, but it's fun to have projects. I don't know.
Yeah.
I choose right now to like to be alone in it.
Okay. And well, you actually mentioned, when you were writing it and watching a lot of sci-fi, like what specific things were you watching that you felt kind of brought out, you know, kind of your creative aspects for this album?
What movies were you?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh man, yeah. Like okay, so for this album, there were a few like specific ones, like Dune, Lynch's Dune, and like things like Enemy Mine, like things that aren't necessarily good. Like my favorite stuff is like Alien and like the classic stuff like that. But like I'm really interested in rip-offs and like B versions of things. I always have been. Like I've always loved like sort of like just like corny rip-offs of things, and in this case science fiction, so things, and Dune is not a rip-off or anything, but I don't know, what is, I don't know, just like Cyborg 2 or something. I
Yeah.
was just watching that like earlier today. That's the kind of thing, and it feeds into it. But aesthetically more stuff like Dune, and I'm really into sand, and deserty stuff, and uh this album has sort of an alien desert vibe. I was sort of part of what I was trying to do is paint this sort of sandy expanse that's on another world that's, I guess, vaguely turquoise, like the sand itself, or it's unclear, and there's like bones, and there's lots of time has passed, and it's really bleak, I guess, or beautiful, somewhere in between. Anyway, that kind of stuff is fascinating to me, or was part of the aesthetic, and Dune fed into that, and I mentioned Enemy Mine just because there's like sand and obviously Alien and just stuff where you actually like see the land of another planet. Like I guess like
Hmm.
was very inspiring to me, and sort of always is, and like caves and just sort of like archaeology. Sorry, wrong word. Architecture slash sort of just indigenous caves and stuff of terrain of other worlds. Just so
Oh
that you
yeah.
can imagine. Yeah, I love
Well,
that.
that's cool. Wow, that's gonna put something in my head, for the next time I listen to it too. I mean, I kind of did get the kind of sandy vibe from it. I mean, deserty vibe from it.
Cool.
Um,
I'm glad.
from listening to it. I mean, yeah, Dune is a movie I really love, even though it's universally panned.
Yeah, no, but that's the thing. It's imperfect. Oh, another one just to mention is like Alien 3 is which is like Dune is universally panned and misunderstood, and I don't know what your thoughts on it are, but it's sort of like aesthetically like very pleasing to me, and has a lot of validity, I think, too, or a lot of like
Oh,
gra-
I loved Alien
gravitas.
3.
Yeah,
I saw it in the theater. I never understood why people didn't like it.
yeah, man, and like yeah, that and Dune, but that reminds me of Dune. Anyway, yeah, things that were universally panned are imperfect, like totally. Lynch can't even talk about Dune. Apparently, like he disowns. I don't think he disowns it, but he was so frustrated with the process of making it in studio stuff, and it's the same with Fincher and Alien 3, and somehow those have like influenced me a lot for this album, like those kinds of things, sort of imperfect masterpieces. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Well, it's funny though because, for a while I was listening to a screenwriting podcast just to for my own curiosity,
Yeah.
and they were talking about Dune kind of in a negative sense, but they were talking about it from the perspective of, oh, well, one of the reasons it didn't work was because, he relied too much on inner monologue,
Mm.
and I kind of wanted to was start yelling at them in the car. I was just like, have you not read the book Dune? That's the whole point, is the whole thing is
Right.
inner monologue,
Right.
which is almost impossible to bring to life on the screen,
Yeah, it really is. It
you
really
know?
is. Yeah.
But, so it's like, no, that wasn't Lynch being weird. I mean, that wasn't that was an actual interpretation of a real thing in the book.
I know, and what
So,
a and it's so ambitious to even try to do, and I think he did I mean, I think just certain aesthetic things that came of Dune are just absolutely priceless and timeless, and also I guess people sort of talk about this more and more, maybe with that Jodorowsky Dune thing that came out, but like just the idea that that film brought about. Oh no, 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 I'm sorry. I'm sorry. No, no, no. Forget it. I was gonna say that the failed Jodorowsky Dune brought about the crew that then made Alien. That's what I was gonna say. It brought together people like Dan O'Bannon
right.
and like that whole crew that made Alien. But I was confused. Yeah, no, Dune is it was later. It was after Alien. But anyway, that whole period is just like that's my jam. Like sandy like 80s sci-fi with like physical effect, practical effects and pre CGI stuff, and um, yeah, that's just like a huge influence on me. I don't know why, like, and not as many books, partly because I'm not a very diligent reader. I don't know, something about visual science fiction like from that period. It really gets me, and I want to make one. One day I really do want to make a feature film.
Yeah, well, and I don't think it's, to me at least, it's not even just. I mean, it's a lot of different things from the '80s, like '80s sci-fi or '80s fantasy or '80s horror movies. I don't know why there is this kind of strange attraction to them that I notice for myself,
I know,
and
and it's like obviously we grew up in that era. It's the obvious thing that it's part of our childhood, and like it's probably true a lot of it, but it is sort of this aesthetic that we haven't seen since. Like
yeah,
there hasn't been anything quite like that. Like when studios would just like pay to make movie, like there would just be Inseminoid would be made.
yeah.
It's like when would that happen now? It's just oh
Well,
man.
it reminds me of like one of the defining experiences for me growing up was we had the movie channel. I don't know if
Yeah,
you had that growing up, but
yeah, yeah. I remember that.
and every Saturday night was Joe Bob Briggs Drive-In Theater.
I guess I no that might be slightly before my time or something.
Okay,
Yeah,
it,
I
it
can't remember that exactly. But what kind of stuff did they play?
it was just like really bad movies from the 70s, 80s,
Yeah,
and
that was
I recommend highly like checking him out. He's a crazy dude.
just check
Yeah,
them out.
Joe Bob Briggs.
Cool.
And yeah, he was just this guy. He put on this kind of cowboy you know, speech or whatever, and like in every single movie he showed, it had a boob and body count. Like before the movie, he'd be like, "You can expect yeah, you can expect 10 boobs and 25 bodies in this movie."
Just to keep you watching and keep.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and so it's just like just the kind of crazy movies that I would see from that.
Totally.
Like one of my favorites was Maniac Cop 2.
Oh yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah, no, I know Maniac Cop 1 and 2.
The thing was, I had never actually seen Maniac Cop 1 until last year.
Wow.
Because
That's with
I
Robert Davey, isn't it? Isn't it that
oh no,
guy?
he's in 2.
Oh, he's in 2, only in 2, right? Right, yeah.
Or no, or is he in he's in 2 and is he in 3? I forget if he shows up in 3, but mostly 2, yeah.
Yeah, no.
Robert Davey is like he's like the king of those movies.
Right, right, totally. Yeah. He's like apparently really right wing. Like I'm not surprised at all, but apparently he's like a staunch Republican now
Oh.
or always has been.
Oh, jeez.
Whatever.
But that's okay.
But anyway, no, yeah, that movie is cool. I actually want to revisit that one too. Yeah, it's got this noirish, just super dark, urban 80s urban stuff is obviously like pretty unique, I think, too.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I don't know what it was. I think it also for me was just because that was when I was starting to, develop my senses and what have you. But
Yeah.
just because I was so terrified of horror movies as a kid,
Yeah.
and so I think because it was that was the period that with your Nightmares on Elm Streets and
Yeah.
Friday the 13th, like because that was the era that I was so scared of
Totally. Yeah, it was
that
very scary.
that going back to it now, it's like those are the movies that I want to watch
Of
because
course.
I want to say like, oh, I was scared of this. Why? Or be genuinely scared. But
Yeah, I
but
mean
maybe,
the better option is, oh shit, this really holds up and still scares me. Like The Gate or something for me is like one of those movies or
oh yeah.
like
I haven't been able to go back and watch The Gate because yeah, the scene where the kid comes out of the wall,
well,
or is it
wait,
the wall? Is that the gate? I don't know.
for me the thing with The Gate, maybe this will remind you which one it is or whatever. It's like just he walks out, Steven Dorff is the kid, and he walks out at one point and his like father's head like melts into his hands and like and he's like, you've been bad, and sort of like melts and drips. Oh, it's horrifying, but it's very Lovecraftian and like cool. I don't know if maybe you're thinking of something else, but I don't know.
Yeah, those movies all kind of bleed into each other, and
Totally.
well, just I mean the ones that I haven't revisited, I should rather say, because because I could be confusing it with another thing. I know for the longest time I had this vision in my head, and I couldn't place the movie, and it was ended up being Return of the Living Dead.
Oh yeah, yeah, right, right.
And it was just the scene of the guys being seen by the paramedics and then being told, "Hey, you're dead."
Right. Yes,
And
yes.
and so I had built that up in my head. It scared the crap out of me. And then and then I revisited and watched it, and it's a fun movie, not necessarily scary
Right,
for
right. No,
me,
a
but
lot of it isn't really
yeah.
scary. Another one for me was The Fly. When I saw that movie in the theater, my dad took me to see The Fly. I think it was '86, so I was 7. I was 6 or 7, so I was too young to be seeing this probably anyway. But there was a scene in particular, this one scene where they break a guy's, where Jeff Goldblum is like arm wrestling a guy and breaks his arm, and he gets a compound fracture, and you see the bone, and for some reason that just I mean, not for some reason. That's a disturbing image, And like, anyway, I couldn't take it, and we had to leave the theater. And then I remember, like a few weeks later, somebody was like, "We're gonna try it again," and we like went to see The Fly again. And I almost had to leave, but I like could see it this time, and I stayed. But yeah, that I mean, really, that shit is like so precious in my mind, and like and so influential, and like really, like, do kids have that experience anymore? I don't think they do. I mean, whatever. I don't want to sound like an old man, but it's just like there's just nothing like those movies anymore. I mean,
No, yeah,
like,
no. Well, it's funny because I mean, like, I think in terms of the movie industry, independent horror movies are just so prevalent now, and
right, right. And they're cheap, and they're making
exactly.
things that are like cheap, and will get a ton of people to see them, like these, like, fake whatever. Like, I can't even remember the names of them. Like just these like video like horror
Oh
movies.
yeah, yeah, like the Paranormal Activity
Yeah,
or whatever.
paranormal. Oh God, I actually know those guys that like made that, so I shouldn't say anything. But God, no.
Well, and it's like if you go to like the Red Box to rent movies, it's just like
I know, I know.
half of them are just like direct to video horror movies because they're so easy to make. They're cheaper or they're cheap to make. And I remember somebody saying that it's so much easier if you're a screenwriter, it's so much easier to get a horror movie made than it is to get a comedy made,
Right,
or or to get like an independent drama because it's just like there's an audience, there's a built-in audience,
right. There's a
you
built-in
know.
audience for cheap thrills and cheap budgets, and like I guess the cheapness has sort of remained, but there's just no creativity. There's no. I'm not, cheap is great, but just like
Yeah.
I don't know where's the creativity? Where's the Jim Hensons and like I don't know, just people like these '80s like minds that I just don't even see anymore. I don't know.
Yeah,
There,
yeah.
whatever. There's tons of great shit. There's always going to be great stuff,
Right.
but like for film, it's a shitty time. Like everyone knows it.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like it's only comic book movies. And I don't know about you. I seem to be the only one with this opinion, but I just cannot stand anything with comic books. Like anything Marvel related, like I just like it's like anathema to me. So to like everyone's always trying to drag me like, no, but it's just there's only like a little bit of comic book. It's like, no, none. I don't want to see that shit. Like I don't like superheroes. I'm just not into superheroes. I mean,
that,
RoboCop is the closest I get to that, I guess. But
that's fine.
I like disgusting things and original things. Like just not just like another Superman.
Yeah, yeah, no. I mean, it's funny hearing you say that because I'm like, yeah, I just went to go see Guardians of the Galaxy this weekend.
Oh, I'm sorry. You may like that stuff. I don't
It's okay. Well, here's the thing. Like, I'm, yeah, whatever somebody feels about something doesn't necessarily offend me.
know.
It's like
Yeah.
because that's the whole beauty of any kind of art. It's just like it's subjective.
It is subjective, yeah.
So that's fine. Like you know, yeah. So no, there's no offense taken. You can make fun of comic book movies as much as you want, and it won't change my opinion or
Good.
or make me discount your opinion.
Good, good. That's very open-minded of you.
um, well, that's the way you got to be, is
Yeah, it's true.
Um, well, it's interesting too because I mean, I just interviewed. So there are these two local Boston musicians, and when their movies are done, I would probably recommend you take a look at them because I think their goal with doing movies was trying to do something, like you said, something more original and something
Yeah,
and so they made a horror movie and now they're making a sci-fi movie
awesome.
within like a year of each other, and and they just ran a couple quick Kickstarter campaigns for like $10,000 or something like that. So
What are their names? Or like,
their names are Michael J. Epstein and Sophia Casiola.
okay, cool.
So they were on episode 5. So if you go,
Uh,
you can listen and you can hear them talk about it.
oh yeah, yeah.
It's like their music, the music they do. I mean, they do. It's kind of like indie rock type of stuff,
Yeah.
but just hearing them talk about movies and talk about like how yeah, he did this horror movie and he was saying like they were bringing it around to these horror film festivals, and he said that it's really funny when his thesis in the movie was playing with the idea of identity, and having like things in the movie which change your perspective about what a character is or something like that.
Right,
And I'm probably butchering his long speech about it,
right,
but
right.
he said that a lot of times people were going into his movie expecting, oh, this is going to be a slasher movie,
Mm-hmm.
and when he does these things in the movie to kind of twist your perception about what the actual movie is, he said, people didn't look at it like, oh, that's interesting and clever. They're like, hey, this is supposed to be a slasher movie.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, that's the struggle right there. Yeah,
Yeah.
getting people to be into like twists and turns, and whether it's like the actual mechanics of the thing or just ideas of that. But like people can be very one track minded or whatever, just sort of
Yeah.
like tunnel vision about this is that,
Yeah.
this is this genre, and I'm expecting this. And yeah, people don't like to be made uncomfortable and confused, and I love doing that. I mean,
Yeah.
that's like what I live for. But I don't
Yeah.
want to just confuse. I mean, I also want to like move people too and make them think, and I don't know, just have a have an adventure sort
Well,
of.
yeah, and I think you do. I mean, I think that comes to me at least that comes across in your music really well.
Thank you.
Um, because yeah, there are parts that I don't want to say make me feel uncomfortable because I don't think there's any kind of music that can really make me feel uncomfortable anymore.
That's great. I
I
like
don't
that. Yeah.
I don't know if that's a bad thing. It's just
Yeah, I don't either, but but I like that you've gotten to that point.
it's just because it's and I think for me personally, it was growing up for the longest time, like not wanting to listen to death metal or not,
Yeah,
being or not wanting to listen to scary music or something
scary
like.
stuff. Me too. Yeah.
Yeah, and then when you kind of throw yourself into it, I mean, yeah, it's like, it's not that I don't feel anything. I hope. I hope I'm not. I hope
I
I'm
don't
not
think that's the
numb.
case.
But but yeah, I mean, but yeah, I like that kind of stuff. I mean, I like things that bring me to that place,
Totally.
whether or
And
not, yeah,
no, absolutely. And that's the spirit of so much of the horror and sci-fi that we were talking about, but also of metal, and like that's something that you and I are into and have been to into and in for a while, I guess, in different ways, but like there is a spirit of metal to Stern always, which is like, not I think it's kind of new because it's not entirely there in the mechanics of the riffing and this and that, and like it, there's no bass and there's all sorts of differences, but there's a spirit, there's sort of a blanket of metal that is there that I don't know, I think it's there, and
no, yeah, no, I think it's there too. I mean,
yeah,
yeah, I'm also
the
not one of,
darkness that that like metal, that it's like, no, we're gonna go here, we're gonna check this out,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
we're not going to shy away from it. We're going to
right,
go
right.
closer. Yeah,
Or like the best kinds of I don't know, like so much like classical or so much stuff where it's like just like you know really expansive sections where you're gonna go in and visit some questionable territory. That's just like it's so fun. I don't know, it's so exciting. But it begins with from the composer's point of view and from the listener, all from being afraid as kids probably of just not wanting to go there, and being afraid to do that and then overcoming that, and it becomes such a thrill, and there's just so much to explore. And I don't know, I think that maybe the more you create and the more obstacles you walk over, so to speak, you the stronger you become as a person, you like not just musically but just like your brain,
yeah,
you've gone to places, you've actually come out of them, you've conquered things, you've like survived certain places and like emotional things, um, that a lot of people aren't comfortable going into. It. That doesn't make you better or worse, but it's just like, I don't know, it can make you stronger personally than you
yeah.
were.
Well, and another interesting thing, um, and as actually, as I'm saying it, I realize in all my interviews, I always go, and another interesting thing. I gotta stop saying that.
No, I think I've
That,
said aesthetic like 50 times already. Yeah.
that's the funny thing about this podcast is that I'm learning the speech patterns
Yeah,
that
this
I've
is how
never
I
noticed.
get thoughts out of my head. Like this is what it sounds like.
Yeah,
Like
and sometimes it horrifies me.
yeah.
You know, but what I was going to say is that for all the dark or the places that you're going to in the music,
Yeah.
I mean the kind of dichotomy, if I'm using that word correctly, is that you yourself are a fairly easygoing, chipper guy.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I struggle. I think like we all do to be a well-rounded human. I don't know, like have to tip things in the positive direction. I think most people would. I know tons of like metal musicians that would agree with that too. I mean, it's not like we don't want to be miserable. None of us do, and I happen to be a pretty positive guy overall. I mean, I go through stuff and I like to try to channel it into the music, and I think that's what we were just talking about. Like, that's another sort of obstacle, or not obstacle, but just like can be a very tough thing to do, which is to like actually when you're dealing with something emotional, like, wait, I'm actually gonna like right now just put this into some music and like, or try to do that, and that can be pretty deep sometimes too. But whatever my therapy is, I have ups and downs, but I try to be a positive guy overall, and I try to be a kind person, and I think I am a
Yeah.
kind person, and yeah, I don't know. My dad is like really optimistic, like just sort of unrealistically, but that sounds negative. But just like he's just always tipped on that side of the fence, and he I don't know, he's had an impact on me too. Because I don't know, my mother I guess is like more negative, so my dad is like more positive. It really is actually that simple, and I have both in me, but like I try to lean towards the positive side of things, and
Well, yeah, but and like you said, it's just, as you're going through things and putting them into the music, I mean, there is a, I think this is kind of overused with music, but there is a catharsis. That is a real thing with, as you finish a song that,
yeah,
you're getting something out of your system,
totally.
and it may, and to the listener, it may mean something completely different, but it came from that specific place within you. And then,
Absolutely.
yeah, so,
Yeah. No, I mean, then that's so nebulous too, like where, yeah, where things come from and where they end up, like ideas. But I think if there's something real in that feeling, however abstract it is, if there's a real emotion somewhere in that idea, like it really can resonate in someone, like no, I do firmly believe that like if something expressed well enough musically, like emotionally, can really resonate in someone, no matter how weird that is. And um, I think that's really important to try to do, is to like contact people,
hmm
emotionally.
yeah, yeah,
And
well,
yeah, emotion is just like, that's what I'm driven by musically. It's more than intellectual. It's emotional, and that's the stuff that I'm drawn to, is more like emotional stuff. Anyway, sorry, what were you gonna say?
it's funny. I was gonna say the exact same thing. Um,
Cool.
because for all the years of being known as being in a sort of avant-garde band or what have you, but
Yeah,
I mean, it's really emotions that get me more than. I think that's
totally.
why I never did well with like trying to be in a prog metal band because I just don't
Yeah.
have the patience for chops. Like I'm just kind of like,
I do know
you
what you
know.
mean. I know. I
It's
know.
it's like, like, because I grew up a fan of Dream Theater,
Yeah.
and they put out this concept album where, and to be fair, I really liked the story. I thought it was and I liked it, but what it was this kind of like 65-minute album or what have you, or 70
Right.
minute, however, it was freaking long. And I was just like, this album would be so much better if you just cut out the extraneous, like like shreddy fests. Like,
Right. Like you could just see that. Yeah.
yeah.
Like this is not needed. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And like, and I say, "Oh, this is a really great album," but I would have edited out a whole bunch and just
Yeah.
kept
Yeah.
like, because the songs where they didn't focus on that, those are the songs where they had the story and they had
Right. Right.
the emotions of the characters or what have
Totally.
you,
Yeah.
and that I liked, but it's just like, the
I know. I know. Yeah. What people would say, call wankery. A lot of that. Like there's I don't know, but there's also like that's not to discredit like technical prowess.
No, no, that's the other thing I was gonna say is that,
Yeah.
well, here's one thing. Maybe you could relate to this. I've come to a conclusion that I think everybody, I mean, in various places, but I think for myself personally, I realize I'm a huge hypocrite
Yeah.
because,
Oh,
like, because
okay. Yeah.
the things I could tell you, oh yeah, I really hate this, technical douchebaggery or whatever, but then it's like I'm like, yo, well, I really love,
This
there's
band.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Like, I
Yeah.
really love Behold the Octopus,
Right. Right. Right.
and I really love Nick Barr. It's
Right.
like,
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
so I mean, I think there's a case to be made that, the people tend to speak in generalizations, but
Yeah.
it really isn't true. It doesn't,
That's
there's
something
always
I struggle
exceptions.
with. I think I struggle with that. I'm guilty of speaking in generalizations a lot, and I think that way. And it's good. It's really good to be aware of that. Yeah, just the fluidity of and the sort of incestuous nature of music, and you can like this but hate that, and I have a million examples. And it's like it's weird. It's like then I'll have some like really extreme opinion about like this band, like of this scene of this particular type of music. Like I hate. I don't know why. Like or I do know why, but it's like they don't like I don't this band I don't like, but this other band they're like very similar sort of like brother band or something like I love or like the band that does like very similar stuff, but for this compositional reason or this whatever I love this band and not this band, and it's like you can just sound very hypocritical on the surface,
Yeah.
like yeah. Anyway, in many ways, I agree. I'm a hypocrite as well.
Okay, good. See, that's where we're getting stuff out there. We're
But that's good. That's good though in music and
it
in art
is.
to be a hypocrite and actually to be I don't know at times like to be pretentious and to be a thief of other people's stuff. Like there are certain things that like there's like crimes that are like kind of allowed in art that I really kind of think are okay. So I'm a proud hypocrite. Whatever
Yeah.
they all,
Yes. No, I am too.
when it
Yeah.
comes to taste, yeah.
So so getting back to the Stern project too. So do you have any gigs set up, or do you have any touring or individual gig plans in the next few months?
We are looking for shows at the moment. I've been actually trying to set some stuff up for like late summer, early fall, but we're basically in the process of setting some shows up. Nothing concrete right now, but definitely there will be some shows, and there will be a record release show at some point for the new record. Which I realized I didn't even like say the name of it actually. It's called Bone Turquoise. Is that the first time I've said that? Yeah, I guess it is.
Well, but the funny thing is, you've mentioned turquoise a few
Right, but I
times.
didn't say the name of it. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's called Bone Turquoise, everyone. And
Well,
yeah,
I was gonna put that in the intro anyway. So
oh, good. It's time to say what it is. But anyway, that's the name of it. And yeah, there will be a record release show for that record, and there will be other shows as well. So definitely be on the lookout. I guess the best way to trace Stern, or at least to hear the music right now, is entitlement.bandcamp.com.
right.
Um, Entitlement is our previous EP. So yeah, entitlement.bandcamp.com, and that has the music and our Facebook. We have a Facebook Stern somewhere. I forget the address, but we'll have news for you on that vague thing.
And so now have in term because it comes from this kind of cinematic experience. We probably mentioned this before, but I mean, are you in before actually trying to do a feature film? Are you interested in pursuing visual or pursuing videos? I should just say videos for any of the songs on Bone Turquoise.
Yeah, totally. In fact, I think I'm gonna make one for Bone Turquoise, the title track. That's probably my next project this summer, is to do that. I have to get Final Cut Pro from Keith illegally somehow, so I don't have that, but he can help apparently. But anyway, yes, I will be making a video for that. I'm pretty sure, which I have some cool ideas for. So at least one video, yeah, hopefully more. I think videos can be effective. I don't always think that they're necessary. Like they're necessary like as a business move, I guess. But like, does the music always call out for one? And in this case, definitely, I think a few of the songs really do. So I think there will be at least one. Yeah.
Cool. And now, when you approach it from a video perspective, are you thinking of are you going to be like storyboarding a specific concept, or is it more just filming imagery that then you can put in with the music, or is it going to have a specific theme, do you think?
I think it's more like imagery that I would assemble to the music with a vague structure in mind. But I think the fun of like a music video would be actually sort of the opposite of the film world, where I do believe that everything should be storyboarded and scripted and perfected to a T. I mean, that's like including camera work. Like I'm sick of shaky cam stuff. Like I actually like the super professional like film conservative kind of model, but for like a music video I would want to do something like a much looser, the way that the music, like sort of let the music be that
Yeah.
that anal retentive sort of like beast, and you sort of like accompany it with images. But I have some cool ideas, and yeah, so that's something I want to definitely do soon.
All right, cool. That's
Yeah.
cool. Well, wow. I mean, this has been a great second interview. So,
Yeah, man, it's been really fun talking to you, Greg.
Worry miniature. No mobility.